Dan Geltrude. Dan, it's great to see you. So, Dan, I always have a great time reading Elon Musk tweets. He has some hot takes, and it seems to irritate many of those on the left. That being said, he's highlighting what's going on in Canada, and obviously there has been a lot of protests, and it's interesting to see the truckers speaking out and definitely causing some chaos there. But they're trying to make and get their point across is that they're totally against the mandates that are happening in Canada, and they want to see those reversed.
Yes, and Elon Musk really, he's not afraid to tell you what he feels, which is actually very nice because whether you like it or not, he's being honest. So in this particular case, all he's simply saying, because Elon Musk has been vaccinated, is to simply say he's against the mandates. Now, what's interesting here related to the truckers' convoy is with the supply chain shortages and inflation that is hitting all over the world, these truckers really have a lot of leverage to bring attention to this issue. Now, Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, well, he doesn't really like this too much, and he's put out some tweets really quite unhappy. But I look at it this way. People should have the right to protest peacefully, and these truckers are doing what they believe in, which is that the mandate should not exist and people should have a choice. And by the way, Trudeau right now is quarantined because he has COVID, and I assume he's followed all of the government protocols. So what message does that send to people?
Yeah, it's an interesting message that it sends. Now, as for the Canadian truck drivers, according to reports, some 90% of them are vaccinated. So it's not that these are all anti-vaxxers, as some of the media are trying to portray them as. It's just that they are very uncomfortable with where Canada is going when it comes to this mandate. They see the tyranny and they want to speak out against it, which makes sense. And I found it fascinating that we had the Prime Minister coming out and call them like a fringe minority. These are the people that are keeping the shelf stocked and making sure that America's fed, or that Canada is fed.
Well, based upon those numbers, Steph, I'm going to say that there are actually truckers that are participating in the convoy who have been vaccinated, and they're making a statement related to the mandates. And I just don't see anything wrong with that. In an environment where literally, whether it's in the United States or Canada, we can't afford to lose one truck driver. The truckers are so critical right now to every aspect of our lives. Why? They're delivering food and all of the other necessities we need to live. So I would say with the attention that they're going to be getting to this issue, I would really advise Justin Trudeau not to ignore them and not to insult them, but to figure out how to work with them for the benefit of the Canadian people.
Yeah, well, those are some wise words. Hopefully he's listening to this show, but probably not. Now, when it comes to inflation, apparently it's hit some of the areas that people have been migrating to during the pandemic, and those areas have been hit the hardest, which I didn't realize was happening. And for example, they were talking about the prices in Atlanta. Apparently they've seen an increase by 8.9%. That's a lot of money.
It is. And what's interesting about this whole migration is, as we already know, that the northeast portion of the United States, as well as the West Coast, have a lot of people moving out of those areas for a lot of reasons, of course, cost being one of them. So as people are moving out of those areas into other parts of the country, what's happening is that inflation is going up. Why? Because it's putting more demand for supplies and products and necessities in these parts of the country that are having the same struggles as everyone else related to being able to keep those shelves stocked. So as people are moving to other parts of the country for, let's say, a less costlier cost of living, are actually causing inflation to rise. So hopefully this is going to be temporary, but it is a fact of life right now for those that are moving.
Yeah, and then in this list, it goes more into detail. They're talking about in Phoenix, they saw 8.4% increase. In Tampa, 8% increase. And then we were talking about in some areas where the inflation rate only went up 4%, like in San Francisco and in New York. Obviously, that's still significant, but it's not like it is in some of the other states and areas where people are migrating to.
Right, exactly. So that is like the hard facts of what we're seeing related to people migrating to different parts of the country. People getting out of Dodge when it comes to New York, when it comes to San Francisco, heading for greener pastures and finding out, well, for right now, it's not quite as green because everybody has the same idea at the same time.
And then speaking of inflation, some chains and restaurants are having to scale back on their value menus as costs continue to rise. For example, Burger King and Domino's have pulled back on their value menus. And we've seen this too over like at the dollar store. It's not really the dollar store anymore. They had to increase prices there. And I guess when it comes to meals, like obviously they're all experiencing the costs that we're experiencing. And so again, it ends up on the consumer.
Right. So what we're seeing right now is value meals don't quite deliver the value that they used to. And you can't really blame these companies. They're experiencing the same inflation in a trickle down fashion that we all are. So for them to be able to get their products is costing more. They also have the cost of labor that has risen significantly. You cannot expect these businesses to simply absorb all those costs. They have to pass them on. And they do that between a combination of raising their prices and or providing less for the same amount of money, which is called shrinkflation, right? So you start to see a smaller value meal for the same price. It's one and the same. It's passing along costs to the consumer.
Yeah. All great points, Dan. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Steph.
Of course. Coming up next.